What is up, Vegas? We are back for the fifth installment of the Guest List podcast. And if you haven't noticed by now, my voice probably sounds a little bit different. And that's because my audio equipment has finally come in from its long and delayed adventure. And so from here on out, I will be recording on some official equipment. And speaking of epic adventures, I hope you guys are ready to go on one today because the man on the opposite screen has been on one crazy adventure over the last 3 years. Have you guys ever had that like fuck it moment, or maybe you're in college or things aren't going right, where the cliche term is to sell everything, pack up your bags, buy an old school van and travel the country? Well, this man has been doing it, and he's been documenting every second of it over the last 3 years. And because of this, he has over 35,000 followers on his YouTube channel, which he calls his Project Earth Story. And I highly advise all of you to check it out. It's quite cinematic. He's built a great narrative. And I even told him at times that when I watch it, it doesn't even feel real. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce him now. He's one of my good friends, Mr. Troy Ozuna.
What's up, dude? Thank you for having me on. It is an honor.
Dude, I'm just glad I could catch you in the middle of a break from your epic adventure.
Yeah, well, this is the perfect time because I'm very easy to catch right now. Can't really go anywhere.
So for those listening, Troy and I, we went to UNLV together. We've known each other probably about 8 years, and
Wow.
Our paths crossed so many different times. We're in opposite fraternities, but our houses were on the same street at one point. So we're always catching each other at same parties, we had the same friends, and even after college, we'd run each other at music festivals, weddings, events around Las Vegas, and it's been an incredible journey. But to give a testament to Troy's character, I do want to share a story, and it was from a time we ran into each other at Electric Forest Music Festival in 2016, which this is about a year before his Earth Story project had begun. And so I went to Electric Forest in Michigan. This is a 5-day music festival. It's 4 days in the forest and 1 day camping beforehand. And it's owned by Insomniac, so that's the people who throw EDC. And it's electronic, it's funk, it's like electronic band, and it's very out there. There's art exhibits, interactive. The stages are built literally in the middle of the trees. And so we caught up with Troy day 0, and he's carrying around this book with him. And this book has gold pages, and it's completely blank. And Troy has a mission, and he's going to share it with people. But in the front of this empty book, he wrote a story. And Troy, can you just explain that story a little bit? Do you remember?
I totally forgot about this whole story. But it's coming back to me. Yeah, it was like 7 or 8 pages. And the reason I forgot is because that book never made it back to me. Hopefully it's with somebody pretty amazing out there. But it was filled with like sketches and stories about just writing your own adventure, I think, like being the hero of your own story. And I think how that ties into like basically like the fate or destiny of the whole world. I think maybe you might remember it better than I do at this point.
I just remember you had this book, and I think it was day 3. I was with you, and you're like, hey, let's go check on this book. And Electric Forest, they have one of these interactive exhibits where it's like an outdoor library, and they have rugs that you could sit on, chairs, and there's books. And I don't know if Insomniac provides the books, but Troy decided he wanted to provide his own book. And one of these days, we're walking up to the library, and there's probably about 20 people in this library, and everyone's like huddled around this one person. And so we walk up to this one person, and I look, and the book has gold pages, and it's Troy's book. And this guy's like flipping through, and every single page is just filled. People have just like filled their stories, and this guy's talking to everyone around him, and he's like, I don't know what kind of witchcraft book there is. There's all kinds of weird stories. Like, they're trying to like make these claims of who Troy possibly is. Is he a real person? Troy had signed his name on the first page, and they're like, all we know is that this guy's name is Troy. And Troy ends up walking up over to everyone and asking everyone what's going on. They're like, yeah, this guy's name's Troy. And he's like, oh, well, I'm Troy. And everyone just like falls over in amazement, and he just goes on this like 5 to 10 minute explanation about the book. But the idea behind the story was that it made me realize what kind of person Troy is. And Troy is very authentic, and he just wants to connect with people in any way possible. And I think this is probably one of the inspirations behind his Earth story. But I know he's very artistic and creative, but it's just the kind of person that I know Troy is.
Ooh, thank you, man, dude. I totally forgot about that. For two reasons. One, because I was on quite a bit of acid, and two, because that was like, I mean, when we were hanging out at EF, that was like 5 minutes before I met Nicole, who I ended up dating for 2 years, and I was like totally in love with her at the time. We were like writing letters for 6 or 7 months prior to meeting. So I think that that whole storyline overshadowed this one, but thank you for reminding me of that. I love that. I forgot about most of it.
That's funny. And yeah, so you mentioned Nicole. Nicole was along with Troy for the most part of his Earth story. And how did you end up meeting Nicole?
So we joined a Facebook group for Electric Forest, and somebody just posted in that group of like 10,000 people, hey, it would be awesome if we became pen pals with each other, you know, like pick somebody and then write to each other so we can meet up at Forest. And I like the Forest before that, 2015, because we actually started writing in like 2014. I lost my phone on the first day. and I was like, ah, fuck it. Like, it's a huge festival. Like, I'm not going to go out and look for it or anything, you know. I'm sure it'll turn up at the lost and found at the end of the weekend, and it did. But I had to explain to Nicole, hey, I'm so sorry, we're gonna have to write to each other for a full another year before we meet. You know, I lost my phone, and so yeah, our meeting was postponed a full year, but we got some extra writing time as pen pals, and we were just friends at that point. And then after Electric Forest, things happen, you know, as they do at festivals, and yeah, we fell in love and dated for about 2 years, and traveled for 2 years in a van together, and then went our separate ways, but we're still friends to this day.
That's awesome to hear. So yeah. Before we get into the content of Earth Story, can we just give everybody a little bit context on who you are? So maybe just a brief description of your childhood and growing up in Vegas and how you ended up as the current nomad you are today.
Yeah, this is it's a story I think about pretty often, just like doing a lot of self-reflection to understand who I am. But like my background very quickly is my parents were Christian missionaries, mom from the Philippines, dad from California/Vegas. They met in New Zealand. They actually started writing letters to each other, got engaged over letters, which is crazy. Had me, I was born in the Philippines and then moved to the US around like 4 or 5 years old. And like California, then came to Vegas at about 7 years old and grew up there. So Vegas is, you know, basically my hometown. But my parents, being quite conservative Christian people as they are, tended to keep me a little isolated and sheltered. So I really didn't do much going out. Even through high school, you know, I tried to go out to parties, and I got to do one party per summer. My parents found out, and I was grounded for the rest of the summer. So I grew up like very, very sheltered, playing a lot of video games, you know, and a big part of that was my own choices. You know, my parents tried to push me to do sports or to just, I don't know, go out and take swimming lessons, and I wanted no part of it. I was fully content staying in my room and watching movies, playing World of Warcraft, reading books. Not too much has changed, except, you know, these days I'd say half of the time I make sure to go out and adventure in the world. But yeah, I was in high school. I joined a technical high school for film and broadcast, and that sparked my love and passion of the visual mediums, and started creating short films at this high school. And since I was the first graduating class, they gave us a shitload of freedom to basically just do whatever we wanted for half of the school day, which was pretty unheard of for high schoolers. We had 20 minutes of airtime each morning to like fill the high school news with, which is a lot. Like anybody who's worked in like broadcast or anything knows that 20 minutes of edited video is like a lot of video. So, you know, it's just me and my friends going around just inventing these crazy short stories. I did like a music show where I interviewed a lot of local bands, and actually gave Imagine Dragons, I think either their first interview or one of their first interviews ever. So that was pretty cool to like look back and see how big they've become. And another one of my favorite productions in high school was this thing called Stories of a Sleuth, where it was these high school detectives, and it was very like film noirish. And we were doing, investigations to find out who stole all the number 2 pencils before exam day and silly stuff like that. So we're running around with cameras, all over this high school for 4 hours a day. And then went to UNLV. Joined the film department and did a lot of things from like screenwriting and acting and some directing, and later double majored in finance, but cut that degree off short. Just graduated with film about like I think it was a semester and a half before I would have graduated with both. But I just decided like, fuck, like I don't think finance is gonna make me happy. Like I don't really want to do a regular job. I'm like, my current job as it is gives me a lot of freedom, but I don't know, it felt selfish, but I was like, it's not enough freedom. So I just sold my car, sold most of my stuff, let friends either keep or long-term borrow a lot of my most precious items, like my Lord of the Rings sword collection. And just hit the road for about 2 years in a van. And then or you said up until the big journey, right?
Yeah,
that about covers it.
It's funny. It's one of my previous guests, Steven, we were talking about how he made a big change in his life too, and he was tired of the same education mold of going through college. And you went through college, but then you decided after college that you didn't want a standard 9-to-5 job, and so you went complete 180 the other way. And
yeah,
I'm just curious, what inspired you decide to do what every young teenager always talks about?
I guess like the big moment was I took one backpacking trip through Europe with Amanda Johnson. I think you might know her.
Mm-hmm.
My big sis in Greek life. So fraternity, sorority life, where I think pretty much met you, and where at least we became friends.
Yep, through Seabass.
Yeah, through Seabass, right. Well, because I met Fishman before, Michael Fishman, before I joined any fraternities. So I'm not sure if I met you at like
through film,
party.
right? You guys are both film majors.
Yeah. So I went to like his house with, I think it was like Danny or something. But anyways, so I did one backpacking trip through like Germany and the Czech Republic. And then 2 months later, I was like, man, that's not enough. So I did another backpacking trip for like 2 months, or like a month and a half, with Joey Miller, one of my brothers and very good friends. And it was like the last night in Budapest in our hostel. I'm just sitting in my bed, and I'm like, I like, whatever happens after I get home, like I don't want this feeling to end. Like I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make sure that I can do this long term. And I mean, it's pretty hard to keep on backpacking. The costs can tend to add up. So I just ran across videos on YouTube showing people traveling in vans, and seeing some incredible places and doing it full time. And I was like, yep, that's for me. I'll have my own little spot where I can read and like have my little nook, but then still be able to see the rest of the world. And so I got super obsessed with that way of travel.
Dude, yeah, it's just watching through your videos, and I had to refresh and go through them again the other day, and I was powering through it. It seems scripted at points, but I know it's 100% authentic. And you're just always walking around with the camera catching different people on different scenes. And when you're always walking around with the camera, do people act differently? Are they more enticed to maybe be a little bit more exorbitant, or do people become a little bit more reserved? Your experience?
Yeah, I guess. Well, so to preface that, I guess I've like really started to narrow down like when I want to have the camera out, which before it was just like nonstop all the time. Which I mean, it still pretty much is. It's just I'm not filming everything, uh, but I guess in some ways, people tend to be a little shyer or like nervous, but I just always make sure to like talk to the camera, beforehand. And I usually say something like, "Oh, it's just for YouTube," like just pass it off as like totally nonchalant. And I think it's a little bit different when people either like just see you filming, like your beer, and then talk about like, this is a spruce bud ale, and it tastes like pine needles, whatever, uh, and like always have it on you. It just kind of tends to be a more natural thing. Um, no, but I mean, like with most of my friends and people that I've seen not on camera, and then versus when I pull it out, there's not too much of a difference, and I really try and make the camera as invisible as possible, especially when I'm recording people, because I mean, my whole thing with Earth Story is just to film life as it is as much as possible, without like any adulteration or like any, which is like damn near impossible, but like you can get pretty close.
Yeah, it's tough nowadays.
Yeah, but I think also with like the Snapchat age that we live in, people are used to the camera, so there's a little bit of that. People can tend to exaggerate a little bit, but it's, for the most part, it's almost the same.
And what's your mission behind the whole project itself? Did you have the same mission when you first started as compared to now, and just the overall goal?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface level, I would say like the mission was just to live in this van and create a successful van life YouTube channel. It's definitely evolved and grown and diverted, from that original idea, which is natural for a thing, for projects to evolve. But I think like the underlying theme of the whole channel is just to like explore myself as I explore the world and like seek to understand it. And so that really hasn't changed. It's the exact same thing, the form and the function and the subjects change on the daily, but for the most part, it's just always been about a sheltered kid seeking to conquer fear and understand the great big world. And I think it's, hopefully, I hope that's what it'll continue to be for the decades that I plan on pursuing this project.
Yes, the forever project, and
The forever project, yeah.
yeah, just watching it through the 2.5 years that you've been doing it, your character has been exactly the same. Nothing's changed really, outside of you were clean shaven and had short hair when you first started,
Yeah.
and now it's long hair, don't care. Love
Yeah,
that
long hair
style.
and haven't shaved, and I don't know. Since I went sailing, I did a boat adventure and I drank a lot of rum. And the captain I was sailing with was like, "You should grow your mustache." I was like, "You're right," and it's been here ever since.
It's funny. How long was your boat adventure, and where was that at?
Yeah, so that's a pretty cool story too. It's Dylan McGaster, who has a channel on YouTube that's pretty big now. Uh, he's going by Florb, Floating Orb Productions now. But I was originally watching him like in the beginning of my van life adventure, and because he was doing not vlogs but videos about other people like living in vans, tiny houses. That was basically at cabins. Now he's moved on to like boats and castles and tree houses, and who knows what he's gonna film next. As long as people live in it and it's not a regular house, he's up in there. But I was watching his channel like maybe 2 or 3 months into my own van adventure, and then 2.5 years later, I get the opportunity through Instagram. Like I guess he just like came across a couple of my videos, and we just like started chatting like 7-8 months ago. I ran into him at an REI a year and a half prior after a music festival, and last summer I just find myself in my DMs like, "Yo, it's just me. I need a crew member, like, can you come out?" I was like, "I'm in." So we sailed from Athens, which is in Greece, through the Aegean Sea, just island hopping along the coast of Turkey, through the Sea of Marmara, and then out to the Black Sea, which is Bulgaria. And yeah, that was 2 months. Pretty gnarly adventure.
2 months on a boat,
2
strictly.
months living on a boat. Yep, living, sailing, learning how to swim because I didn't know how to swim.
You didn't know how to swim going in?
No, man, definitely not. I was terrified of the water, but I just like literally dove headfirst, and yeah, it was cool. I was terrified of drowning in like deep water and being nauseated. Like being nauseous was just like the worst kind of sick. I'd smoke a little too much weed sometimes and get like a stomach ache, and I'm like, I'm out, like I'm done. I'll just go like lay in my bed and and sleep it off for 6 hours. So yeah, that was two really big fears that I had that I knew I mean, one way or another had to conquer.
Yeah, I guess being a world explorer, you have to consistently put yourself in uncomfortable positions and eventually conquer your fears or have someone else teach you.
Yeah.
What I've never met anyone who's lived on a boat for 2 years. What are like
2 months.
or 2 months? My bad.
Yeah.
My bad. What are like the daily activities that you do, and how big was this boat?
The boat was 33 feet. So it was, not a huge boat, but not a little one either. We had everything was basically one room, and there was like a bed towards the bow, or the front, I think is the bow. I'm getting all my seamanship terminology now. It's kind of funny because when you're in a boat, like you have to use port and starboard, and the bow and the stern and all this stuff, because seamanship language has to be so precise and particular, because communication has to be like 100% clear. Like there can be no confusion.
Yeah, you're isolated from technology, so you're just relying on your fellow crewmen.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. But everything was basically one long room. I mean, I'd say maybe like 2.5 times the space of my van. So
Oh
yeah,
wow, yeah, it's a pretty small area.
Yeah, but you have like you have the deck as
level.
well, that you like the cockpit and the deck, so you can like lay out and suntan or do a little bit of yoga.
Did you guys have to fish for all your food?
We tried fishing and didn't catch anything. Unfortunately, the state of the oceans is we caught way more plastic than fish.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, pretty much most places around the world is like overfished, and it's very, very hard to catch anything. But I mean, no, we'd stop into like marinas and ports, and whenever you sleep, like you have to find an anchorage. Okay. Otherwise, like you'll just be sailing, and you have to take shifts, manning the sails, and like you can't just anchor in the middle of the ocean. You have to find like an enclosed bay where the topography breaks up some of the really big waves, and you just you have to find a good spot to anchor. So we'd stop by in like little island villages in Greece and little coastal towns, and so that was pretty amazing, like going to towns that had maybe 100 people in them or 200 people in them, and there was one restaurant in town.
You just dive into the culture there.
Yeah. Amazing culture. The Greek people are so laid back and very, very chill. So that was a lot of fun, and tons of seafood, man. Like I've never enjoyed sardines or squid or just any of these amazing seafood as much as I did in Greece. It was just so delicious, so fresh. Caught from I don't know. I'm trying to think of a Greek name, Mykonos or whatever. Some Greek guy that's like just a few doors down. So that was pretty epic. But as far as daily tasks go, I mean, boats are a shitload of work. I thought I wanted a boat sooner, but now I definitely know I want one later to live on, because you're doing something every day. Like, I mean, not only is traveling in a boat and like anchoring takes so long. You're going about 7 to maybe 10 miles per hour to get to a destination. So 150-mile sail will take you like 25 hours, and your boat is constantly being smashed by waves, and like you're just always constantly moving. Like there was a lot of like hauling in ropes, which was when the force of those winds are hitting those sails, like there is a lot of a lot of pressure built up on those sails, and it's a lot of work to travel, and you're constantly like polishing, fixing things. So one night we're on this anchor for like 18 hours, and we fall asleep at like 10 p.m. and I wake up at 3 a.m. and Dylan's yelling like, Troy, get up here, we're on the rocks, like the anchor just slipped out in the middle of the night, and we're like getting smashed up onto some rocks, and so we have to go, like haul in the anchor, try and drop the anchor 10 or 15 more times. That doesn't work, and so we have to like motor to a better anchorage, and don't get to sleep till like 6 or 7 a.m. So it's an adventure, but the worst times at the moment are the times that you remember the most. It's like it makes for the best stories.
It's all about the journey.
Yeah,
something that you preach.
Yeah.
So let's take it back a little bit. So you met Nicole, like I said earlier, at Electric Forest 2016, and then you start Earth Story in 2017. What's the transition like from, I guess, leaving your job and then buying the van and getting ready to go on this epic adventure?
Yeah, the transition. Hang on, I'm gonna grab some water.
You guys are all good. Troy's a thirsty man. If you guys can't
Yeah.
tell, he takes on pretty much any task at him. He's almost like a yes man out, and it shows through his videos. And when you guys do watch some of his videos, he runs into a ton of hippies. It's crazy. One of his most popular videos is called, I have it written down here, drove into a total hippie town in Canada, and it has 954,000 views.
Yeah, that's a classic. Oh, that one was crazy. Yeah, I met like an 84-year-old woman walking around, and like we bought her a beer at like 12 p.m. at noon, and she tells me she's a little crazy and a little kooky. I mean, she had broke her leg and like had screws in her leg and was just, like still traveling around and hiking at like 84. Quite the adventurer. She was a nomad as well, like traveling across most of the world for decades.
Why did that video go viral? I'm curious, because you have like a steady pace of like 3,000 to 4,000, and then there's some that jump into like 10,000, but this one's like exceedingly high. Almost.
Yeah, that one I think was good thumbnail, good title. And it's just interesting because the street artist that I would end up meeting later in a back alley, and we'd become good friends, and I met him in an alley, and an hour later I was like, yo, I really need a shower. He's like, yeah man, come on over. So it was a picture of him, and he was holding out like this plastic bag, and it was just like fermented yam or this rotten yam. But in the thumbnail, he's an attractive kid, long blonde hair. I think he was shirtless, and he's holding this thing, and it says, "We ran into a total hippie town in Canada," and you're like, "What is going on here?"
It sparks your curiosity.
Yeah, which I think that's like the trick with YouTube. Is I mean, shit is just so saturated. So I think it's all about like creating an enticing looking thumbnail with a title that sparks interest, and like you're really riding a line between it not being clickbait and it being relevant but still eye-catching enough to grab the attention of people who have stimulus inputs from a million different sources.
Yeah.
So I think of the thumbnail and the title. I mean, usually that has everything to do with it.
Yeah, it's funny. Your other popular one that has 44,000 views is called 30,000 Hippies in a Solar Eclipse.
Yeah. People like hippies.
YouTube wants the hippies.
Yeah. The tube wants the hippies, most definitely. Those are my best performing videos. Is anything with hippie in the title, which I try not to abuse too often. I only use that word if it's relevant. But
hippies are just attracted to you.
I mean, that's probably it. You're right.
New age hippie. But going back, I'm curious, where did you find your van? I know it was an 85 van that you named Voyager.
Yeah.
Where'd you find this?
Yeah, so that's a pretty good story too. I forgot about that. Well, I was originally looking for a VW because all the YouTube videos I was watching were like, VW vans, classic combis, and by that time van life was like just picking up steam. So all the VWs were like all like purchased, and I mean, you could find a barely running one for like $15,000. Like, well, that's not going to happen. I don't have that kind of money. So I was just like scouring Craigslist and found this pretty sweet 85 Dodge B350, which is a, boxy high top camper van that I bought from some dude in Sedona. And I decided to name the van Voyager because I'm a huge space nerd, and I just love the idea of the Voyager probes, or the Voyager missions, where they put these golden discs containing essentially like a record of humanity's history and a bunch of like songs and photographs, in the hopes of it reaching some intelligent species that would be able to see like, oh, like there were or are humans, whenever that is. Fun fact, I think the Voyager one, or I can't remember if it's one or two, but it just flew past Pluto like a year or so ago.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like exiting the outer limits.
Cloud?
I don't remember if it's Voyager 1 or Voyager 2, but it's supposed to be exiting interstellar space.
Yeah, which is badass.
But going on to the van though, and then you found the van, and where was your first destination after you got Nicole to join you on this epic adventure?
Yeah. So let me I'll back up and tell this one story. I think you'll find this pretty fascinating. So the Voyager missions were launched in 79 or something like that. And I spent, not too long, maybe a month and a half building up the van, building cabinets, figuring out on YouTube how to work on the engine. And for some of the more complex repairs, because the DMV tried to totally screw me over. So I had to pay an extra $1,500 to do some special useless things to the van. But I was in the waiting room of the mechanic shop, and I see this older black dude with he's very old, 85, maybe 90, probably 85. And he has a hat that says retired Navy. I was like, hey, what did you do in the Navy? He's like, oh, I did a lot of satellite communications, intelligence work. But the biggest thing I did was I worked on the Voyager missions. I was like, what? You gotta be kidding me. Yeah. So that I was like, I was stunned. I was stunned. I was like, all right, this is definitely a sign from God or the universe, or the grand destiny, whatever you choose to believe, that whatever I'm about to do is it's time.
Yeah. You're on that great path. And I know in one of your videos you talk about synchronicity. I know that's something that you believe in, that everything has a purpose and everything's sort of intertwined.
Yeah. It's so I guess following my mantra, trying to understand the world, is trying to tell its story. And I notice I try not to deal or say anything in absolutes of what's good and what's bad, or what the final end product of things are. It's things as fucked up as World War II and German scientists researching the V2 rocket, right, when they were bombing Great Britain, ended up becoming the catalyst for the United States to bring those scientists in and create a rocket to go to the moon, which ended up being a good thing. So not saying that that's justified in any way, shape, or form, just that the story seems to be a lot more complex, and it gets more and more complex every day, or with every thing that I read or look up. And on a personal level, the synchronicities that I experience, and it's not really a new concept or anything that just appeared with the spiritual crystal community. Psychologists like Carl Jung was writing about synchronicities for a very long time, and back in the day in traditional I guess Christian or Protestant times, it'd be considered miracles by God. But I really do think they're just markers along the path of humanity's story, which is very interlinked with my personal or anybody's personal story, especially if you choose to believe in them. I put a lot of things on faith, without any guarantee that things will succeed, or that I will come out of it alive.
Yeah, that's literally your whole journey, is you're just putting faith that everything will intertwine, like you're saying, and connect at some point in time. And like as you go on through your journey, you're sleeping on people's couches, you're just meeting different people, starting different conversations, and shit, you ended up on a giant boat journey of somebody who you were researching in the beginning and then just happened to link up with 2.5 years later, 2 years later. So
Yeah,
that is literally the definition of synchronicity. You guys' energies are felt on some
right.
level.
Yeah, like what you were saying about how some things feel like scripted or like they're like pre-planned. It's a trip for me to like go back and watch some of these videos, and I'm like, how is any of that, like I filmed there, I filmed that and I was there, but like me sitting here, it's like it seems even unbelievable to me. And like I've never really thought of myself as anybody special, or at least, back then, like I don't think like some grand adventurer. I mean, I choose to live that life, but like I don't think of myself as like some incredible being. And I think these experiences are open to anybody. It's just, I think it's just about belief and putting your faith out there that there are some real invisible forces at work that kind of intertwine all of our stories together. So yeah, synchronicity is like a really big part of my life. Even now, just it gives me a lot of courage to keep on the path where otherwise I think I would have stopped or turned away.
Did you ever have moments where you had to almost second guess yourself and you thought of maybe stopping the project, or were you always gun ho on it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been very gung ho about it. Um, I have had, like, I mean, I think everybody has those days, or maybe like a week or so, where you're like questioning your whole path in life, and you're like, what did I do? Oh no. So that happens a lot. Yeah, because I mean, I've been, basically every cent that I have goes to either like cameras or funding these journeys. Like all the documentaries I shoot and like everything I do is self-funded. So I've never, I guess, I don't know. A lot of people do YouTube as a business, and I mean, which it is for me. Like I do like freelance video and YouTube. I try to monetize as much as possible, but I've always thought of it as like no matter what happens, like I don't care how scary it gets career-wise. And I do have a lot of those like doubts and fears that like, wow, I'm really fucking my life up. But I just decided to just go head first no matter what.
Yeah,
And always pursue it.
in one of your first videos, you talk about how you're going to continue to post a video every week, regardless if there's 10,000 viewers or 0 viewers, and you have stayed steady with it completely.
No, I have not.
I mean, there was like a few month break, right?
Yeah. There have been a couple periods where it's like, yeah, I mean, most of my videos are like one a week. I'm finally back in that groove. I've been doing more than one a week for the past like 4 or 5 videos, but yeah, for a while there, I had to pick up a lot of client work, so that took up the majority of my time. But I did stay steady for 1 video per week for, yeah, I think like a good year and a half or so, or maybe up to 2 years. But there just came a point where I owed so much money for like camera gear.
I guess that makes sense. When you're traveling, you don't have a job, so you just have to live cheap or do. What kind of client work were you doing?
Mostly video stuff. I mean, I taught myself graphic design on YouTube, and so I've had a few graphic design clients, but most of it is video. So like a lot of corporate videos, anything from like, weddings, music videos, editing work. I've like shot and edited videos for other YouTubers as well now. So basically just whatever pays the bills at the time.
Completely understandable. I mean,
Yeah.
driving around in a van, obviously you have to pay for gas. If you're not staying on a friend's couch, sometimes you have to pay to park your van at a park or whatever parking lot it is. You have to eat.
Yeah.
So there's all these different bills that you have to pay for.
Yeah, there are bills, but the cool thing is that the first year in the van, I basically like lived off of $8,000 for the whole year. And then the second year was like, maybe 10 or 11,000. Last year was like 15,000, which compared to like a normal job that isn't much, but like the amount of things that I've been able to do. And a lot of it has been, like with friends letting me crash, at their house for like a month or two as I edit all my footage. Shout out Corey Michelle, love you guys. Or like, being welcomed on a boat where the only payment that I had to do to like earn a bed was just like the physical labor part of it, and help Dylan film for his channel. So that was one of the biggest surprises, is like how like monetarily, like the numbers were very low, but my experiences were just like unparalleled, for the amount of things I got to do. So that was a big surprise in the financial side of it.
Yeah, you're building value that's outside of this fake monetary system. That's, well, I wouldn't say fake, but it's a socially created structure.
For sure, yeah. It's and it's a system we felt was like so solid, and then with the whole coronavirus thing, you're like, what is happening?
Money printer go burr. That's my favorite meme on the internet right now. It's funny, but yeah. So I want to go back a little bit. We keep going off on these tangents, which I love. But I want to create your destiny. I'm sure your whole journey has a million tangents on it as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So when you left Vegas with Nicole, where was your first destination?
First destination, because Into the Wild was a huge inspiration for me. So the closest destination that was Into the Wild was Salvation Mountain. So Nicole and I spent a pretty magical night. I mean, I don't even know where exactly it was. It was the Mojave Desert, and it was like those massive windmills, and we got to park right under them, and had like flashing, strobing red lights, and they're just like all around us. They look like spaceships or something. So that was pretty magical. And then the next day, we go to Salvation Mountain, and Chris McCandless's photo is in one of the caves there. It's super close to Vegas. It's like 3 hours or so away. So if you guys haven't been there, definitely recommend. That place is pretty amazing. All built by hand by some guy with a dream. It seems like some one solitary human with a dream. If you work hard enough and long enough at it, can just create a spectacular thing for the rest of the world. So yeah, that was a pretty amazing first stop. And then that same day we went to this whole house built of mirrors, which was so sick. It was so awesome. I don't know if you got a chance to see that video.
I don't think I did.
No. It was an entire house, the roof, the walls, the interior of the walls, like everything was all mirrors. And it was a temporary art exhibit for Coachella. So that was pretty badass.
Talk about a psych trip.
Yeah, it only stuck around for like 3 or 4 months. So that was pretty awesome to see. And it's cool that, it's a place that you can't go back to. Like
very unique.
Yeah, that set the stage for a lot of parts of the journey where, it's like there's always something happening around the world that you'll never be able to be there for again, or it'll never happen again. And so that was like one of the first of those experiences.
When you guys set off for your travel, was there kind of an outline on where you guys would travel, or were you doing exactly what you're just talking about, and you're just going off on these side adventures, and just kind of going after what looks shiny at the moment?
Yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of diversion from the path, but we had to get Nicole to Seattle, because she was only going to be out with me for like a month or a month and a half before flying home. And then so we did long distance for like 7 months, 8 months, where she would come out to the van one more time after that for like another period of like 3 weeks. So we had like a general destination in mind, like go up the 101 through California, Oregon, end in Seattle, and then she would fly home in Seattle like that month and a half later after joining me in Vegas. And she flew out to me without, we had spent like 3 days in person together at a music festival, so it was a pretty ballsy move on her part to come out and live with a dude. And we weren't technically dating. I mean, it was like getting there, but Yeah, it was a pretty brave move on her part. And
Yeah, it's going on faith, as you were saying earlier. Sometimes you got to take these leap faiths, and then it goes back to the synchronicity of being pen pals and then not meeting up with her because your phone died, and then meeting up with her again finally, and going on this crazy adventure.
Yeah, everything happened exactly how it was supposed to, especially looking back, talking about synchronicities like we were earlier. It's like hard to see where things fit into place at the time that you're experiencing them, but it's only with hindsight that you're like, wow.
Yeah, 100%. And when
if these things or that period of my life that I was tough.
Right.
We're good? Okay.
No, we're back.
Okay. Okay, cool.
It like froze for half a second. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I was scared.
But I'm curious, when Nicole would go off on these breaks and you're traveling alone, did the camera help you not feel alone and it sort of spends like lonely, or are you just not that kind of person?
No, I mean, honestly, I really love being alone. I love being on my own. Like, you're never really alone. In fact, even like being in the van, like by myself, I found that it was still hard to get solitude, which is something I definitely seek out a lot. Like at this point in my life, I've like discovered that I'm not, at least right now, and probably for a while, like just not built for a relationship or to, have, not that people were holding me back, but I much prefer blazing my own path, like at my pace, which for some people is like unbearable. And I really prefer to, in a lot of things, like just be totally solo, and come to terms with that, and feel very at peace about that, and like understanding that about myself has helped, with a lot of like self happiness and understanding who I am.
Yeah,
so but yeah, the camera definitely helps to, just, I mean, I'm carrying like 35,000 people with me, in the palm of my hands. And so that's a pretty cool idea, and an idea I never try to forget, that there's, people who like can't travel, or they're just not at that point in their life where they're courageous enough to do it, or they just don't have the finances to do it. And I don't know, people seem to enjoy it. So I try and never forget that, like, the camera I'm talking to is like, each one of those 35,000 people is a real individual that, for some reason or another, is choosing to watch what I'm doing in my life. And it's like, it's helping, or, there have been a few people on Instagram that have reached out and be like, yo, your videos like totally changed my life. Like, I've been hitchhiking for the past year and a half. I'm like, holy shit, like I haven't even done that yet. So yeah, no, I don't really feel lonely ever.
That's, you're giving inspiration to everyone, just as when you were watching the previous van YouTube channels before. So you're giving back to the community. Yeah,
man. Yeah, everybody's helping each other grow, which is amazing. Yeah, and seeing the YouTube community, from the watchers to the creators, is just, it's pretty unbelievable. Like, it's a community unlike anything else.
So you'd say YouTube's probably the best network community online?
I guess it depends what for what your purposes are. YouTube's actually the second biggest search engine behind Google, as I'm sure you've heard or read.
I actually said that in a previous podcast.
Nice. Yeah. Which is like strange to think of, because you're like, no, it's a video site. But I would say the community on YouTube is way, way stronger than Facebook. The community of like, subscribers and creators, like there are a lot more creators on YouTube, forming squads, or like appearing in each other's videos. And I know a few creator friends on Facebook, and yeah, the audience retention rates are just not as high. And but there's a easier and faster chance of virality on Facebook, just because sharing is so easy. So it kind of just depends what you're after, but I'm definitely a YouTube guy. There's
Yeah,
and definitely a pretty awesome community.
Going through all of your videos, all the comments on your videos are just very uplifting, very positive. The upvote to downvote ratio is over 100 to 1 on all of them. So it's just like nonstop positivity. You're inspiring people.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. The response has been cool. I was afraid of like the negative, a lot of negative comments and judgment, but like the followers have been just unbelievable.
How long did it take to get to, let's say, 10,000 viewers?
So I was sitting at 1,000 subscribers for like a year and a half, maybe, about a year and a half. And it wasn't until that hippie town video like just went totally viral that my channel blew up, basically. So with algorithms, especially the YouTube algorithm, you can never really tell. Like, there are some of my favorite creators, I like started watching them at like 10,000, and in the course of a month they're at like 900,000 subscribers. So I mean, I've been doing it since April 2017, so it's been about 3 years to get to 35,000 subscribers, which by some accounts is slow. By some accounts, it's like much faster than other creators. But for myself, I kind of always told myself that I would never, I'd always create as if I had 0 subscribers. Like, the subscribers and the views are important for getting more resources and getting paid for your videos. But ultimately, the numbers, besides being able to do it full time financially, I never really cared too much about the numbers.
Does YouTube pay you for any of those videos? I haven't talked to anyone with 35,000 viewers, so I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so actually, I don't really get paid much at all. Most of my funding still comes from like freelance videos, not to do with the YouTube channel. I'm getting about like $100 a month from Patreon, which is specific subscribers accessing my Patreon profile, and they'll get like personal posts by me or some like extended videos, and they're paying maybe like $3 a month. And the highest paying patron I had, he was like paying $50 a month for like 3 or 4 months. And then on YouTube, how much you're paid is dependent on subscribers, but it's about how monetizable your video is, how monetizable your audience is. So there's obviously so many variables just between those two, and some other factors. But I'm only getting about like maybe $20 to $30 a month from YouTube. So it's still it's still not a lucrative business, but I love it. And the good thing is that it just keeps on growing.
It's all about percentage points, from 35,000 to 40,000 is it's only what 5,000 followers, which is a smaller percent than if you were to take that same percentage from 1,000 to 2,000 or whatever the numbers are. I'm terrible at math, so.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I avoid it at all costs.
That's fine. So when you're traveling alone, do you have like a go-to icebreaker when you want to talk to people, or just when you interact with people is just bare of the situation?
A recent icebreaker that I have, but this isn't like with strangers. I like parties or whatever. I'll be like, like, hey, pick a number from 1 to 74, and they're like, okay. So they pick a number, and I've got a list on my phone of like 74. I mean, the original list is like 74 questions to make you fall in love or whatever. But but I just like use it to ask people interesting, thought-provoking questions. But when I'm traveling, it's I'd say like half of the time people just start talking to me, and then, or like 40% of the time people start talking to me, 40% of the time I'll like just get a feeling that I have to talk to somebody. And usually that's where like the best experiences come from, or like the wildest stories, just like an innate feeling that you have to start a conversation with somebody. And then the other 20% is just like, hey, like, what's going on? So I make sure to like smile and say hi to everybody. But yeah, that's what I'm saying though, is like a lot of times it's very hard to really truly be alone. So often I'll just like find places where there's nobody and then just travel there and be with my thoughts for a while. But yeah, it's a mix of everything. Traveling is easy, you know, it's easy to talk to people.
Yeah,
You
I'm
just
sure.
you make
Yeah.
friends.
And once you do it, you become more comfortable. One of my previous guests had been to 24 countries, and vast majority of his traveling is done by himself. You're not waiting on anybody. You don't have to deal with other emotions. You just go straight to whatever you're feeling at the time, and then you can be more in the essence of the moment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I much prefer solo travel. Just like you said, that was Andrew.
No, his name's Naboo.
Naboo. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What does he do?
He's a VIP host in Vegas, and
Nice.
in the slow seasons, he goes out and travels, and he's trying to hit. I think he said it was over 100 countries. He's been to 24, but obviously because of the coronavirus, we've all those travel plans have paused.
Yeah, coronavirus. What's that?
Never heard of such a thing. So during this van travel, you go up to Cali, and then you go up to Seattle, and then obviously you went to Canada because your video, that's your viral video, Hippie Town, Canada.
Yeah.
And do you go more into Canada, or you come back down to America?
Yeah, so I was pretty much all up in BC, and then came out through Idaho, and it was mostly the Pacific Northwest. Like most of that first year or so was in the Pacific Northwest, and then which was amazing. I think one of my most memorable sections of that journey was the Olympic Peninsula, which has like one of the only non-equatorial rainforests in the northern hemisphere. It's like the northwesternmost part of the United States, and it's pretty amazing there. And then I came back to Vegas for like a couple months to work, do some repairs to the van, and then we just went all through, you know, Arizona, New Mexico, Montana, Wyoming, basically all the way to Michigan, and then went to New York City, but we just took a bus there because the van we decided to sell the van because it needed some serious work.
Did
So that was when things. What was that?
Did the van ever break down when you were traveling? I know that'd be my biggest fear. You know, you're in an isolated area, maybe you're in a desert or something like that, and you break down and you're just completely stuck. I have no idea.
Yeah, so the van would break down pretty often. It was a carbureted engine, an old engine, so it was mostly always the carburetor. But there was one time when we were stuck, you know, 44 miles away from the nearest just anything town. It was like the deserts of Utah, and it took us like a day to figure out how to get the van back up and running. It was carburetor again. But that was pretty scary. I was like, let's see, okay, 44 miles, like, can I walk that? And they're like, no, probably not. So yeah, a lot of breakdowns happened. But yeah, the scariest one was in the deserts of Utah. Utah, like, besides Salt Lake and that western portion is like really, really empty.
Yeah, I've never been. I've been to Duck Creek and forget one of the lower areas of Utah, but I haven't been able to explore. I've been to Zion too, and
yeah, Zion and Bryce Canyon, legendary spots.
It's the favorite Vegas tourist area to go hike to.
Oh yeah. I think that's the best choice in like the local, you know, day trip vicinity.
Mm-hmm. And so, okay, so you're tired of the van. You bust down to New York, and what was New York like? Now you're completely vanless at this moment. Like you're done with the van.
So right, yeah. Nicole was getting pretty tired of traveling in the van, and it was becoming like not very economical, especially like we had like no money to our name basically. But so we took a bus to New York, and she was like part of this Facebook group called Girls Love Travel, which is a great resource if you're a female, especially a solo female traveler. Definitely, if you're listening, go join them. They're awesome. But she basically traded like a photo shoot and a video shoot of these like aerialist acrobatic ladies for us to stay there, stay in their extra bedroom for a week. And we did that whole trip, including bus tickets and a flight home to see my parents for Christmas for under $500. So
Oh,
that was
wow.
pretty insane to do, like New York City for that kind of money. And I mean, I loved it, man. And it was like the dead of winter, basically. And I was just out there, you know, from usually 6 or 7 a.m. till midnight or 1 a.m. And I'm in love with New York City. The energy there and the electricity that you feel is really palpable.
It is. I've been there one time in the summer, and the first thing I noticed is that it is much faster than Vegas is. Everyone is moving 400 miles per hour. People are jaywalking all over the street. No one's following the street laws.
Yeah.
It's utter chaos.
Yeah, and the great part about it is like it's all locals, you know. I mean, not that Vegas isn't amazing, but the tourist scenes tend to get like a little tiring. But in New York, there's just so many people chasing a dream, you know, and living their specific mission. You know, everybody in New York is on a damn mission, and that's pretty amazing to see. I was like a little sad that I couldn't be living in New York City during the whole, you know, COVID thing, just because I would have loved to be there to, you know, film everything that was going on and create some content. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite cities in the United States. It's like New York City and San Diego, the two complete antithesis of each other. But I love the polarity.
When I was watching your video, I think it was like 2 days ago, I saw that you met Matt Silver in New York. And
Yeah.
for those who don't know, Matt Silver is that viral guy on the internet who's waving chickens around in his chickens around. He's like mostly naked, and he's like, "Love yourself."
Love farts. Yeah, the
Yeah.
love fart revolution, and he's a hairy Jewish man, and he looks homeless, and he's got a beard going everywhere, and yeah, he's usually in like a women's underwear and does some pretty wild stuff.
Is he like that in person too, as his videos portray?
So he's actually a performance artist, and so the actual Matthew Silver is much chiller. And I've gotten the pleasure of like running into him. Actually, I ran into him in Denver, and then I've seen him at a lot of music festivals. And yeah, he's a really cool dude. He is. I mean, yeah, he's not shy, but he's pretty quiet. You know, like when he's not on. So like all the stuff that you see on YouTube and everything like that, he's doing performance street art basically. But yeah, he's a rad dude. Who would have thought, right?
Dude,
That
yeah.
kind of art could exist.
When I watched that video and said that you met Matt Silver, I was like, "Who is that?" And then on the video of your video, showed him waving the chickens around. I was like, "Oh, I know this guy, 100%."
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
funny.
I think most people have like seen like a clip or something of his wildest antics.
Oh yeah, dude,
Yeah.
he was a meme for a long time, still is. And so once you leave New York, where's your journey take you after that?
Yeah, so we go to Vegas to spend Christmas with the family, and then I go to like live with my parents for a month in Carson City, and just like, you know, lay pretty low, figure out the financial situation. Nicole ends up going to work in Alaska at a ski resort, and I mean, between in the middle of that period is like where we decided to part ways, just because she, I think, wanted a little bit more like stability, which I totally understand. And then basically I stay there for a couple months, and then I was supposed to do a hitchhiking and urban camping trip through Japan. So like tent camping in cities, and you know, trying to hitchhike my way across Japan. But my dad had a surprise heart attack, so he had to go in for a surgery. So I just canceled that trip and stayed in Carson City for a little bit longer. And then around like May, I was, you know, just mostly video editing, getting through like the crazy amount of footage that I had from, you know, months prior. And then right around that time is when I discovered I'd be sailing with Dylan. And then I filmed 2 festivals between that, which was, pretty awesome as well. So got a little bit more of not as much of the nomad life. Got to set some roots for a while, see friends, live in a place for more than a couple of days, which is nice.
Yeah, breaks are important. If you just gun ho on something, you could almost lose yourself at times. I mean, you find yourself and find out things that you never expected, but then you also lose maybe who you really are, because that you have no friends kind of bring you back to who you are. It's a lot of nostalgia when you go visit all your old friends and you talk about all your old memories and you're like, oh, okay, I remember that. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's good to remember though.
It is, especially after like a long journey, being able to come back home and like seeing Vegas in a totally brand new light. It's like that feels like more of an adventure than continuing on with like traveling to new places sometimes, or at least it did for me. So that was, it was a pretty beautiful experience.
Heck yeah. So now that the journey's been halted because of coronavirus, where's the Earth Story going next?
Yeah, so Earth Story was supposed to be going on a dirt bike adventure to South America, to the southern tip of South America, because there is a solar eclipse festival at the end of this year, but that's probably not happening. I could say it was because of coronavirus, but honestly, like I just wasn't putting in like the work I needed to on my dirt bike and to be like ready for a journey like that. So I ran out of time to do that journey before any of this virus stuff hit. So I can still tend to be a pretty bad procrastinator, but it's getting much better. Now Earth Story is just up in the air. I'm taking the next month to finish out editing the rest of my adventures now that I'm like stationary and not going anywhere. I just came back from a trip to Vietnam where I was like riding around motorbikes for most of the time for 3 weeks. So that was pretty gnarly. And I might be going back out to Greece on a bigger boat. It looks like an actual massive pirate ship.
Yes.
But that's also up in the air just because of all the virus thing. That was supposed to be in June on a vessel called the Kraken, and finish so I'd be doing like just a 2-week journey with them. They're doing an ocean cleanup through Greece, and then I would have been landing on the island of Lesbos, where the majority of refugees from like Syria and the Congo and like Afghanistan are going, and there's a really big refugee camp there. So I was filming with them last summer for like my first full-length documentary, and I was going to go out there to finish it. But yeah, man, I don't know. Right now, I'm just honestly like my family moved into a new house here in Reno. So I've just, been with them, helping them move in and repair floors and paint walls. And we got a vegetable garden going on, enjoying a bit of the domesticated life while I can until I figure out
what's next,
what's happening.
It does sound like your plans are getting bigger and bigger, though, and you're exploring more of the Earth and not just the United States. And it's a hat of Canada.
Yeah. One of Canada's best hats. Yeah. BC is awesome. I do know before I turn 30, being a huge Lord of the Rings fan, I've got a Lord of the Rings tattoo. I want to use my year-long visa in New Zealand to like travel a significant amount of that country on horseback. So I've got about like 2.5 years to do that. Those are most of my big plans. And then probably after that, when you plan your life, it's
tough.
Like, oh, well, I'll do this year and that this year and blah, 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 blah. And then you look back and you're like, oh my God, I just spent like 2 months playing World of Warcraft again, or going out to drink with friends, but that's okay.
Yeah. Plans never work out the way that you want it to. So, it's like when you're at a music festival and you try to plot all of the artists that you want to see, and you end up seeing maybe 20% of them because all of these random things that happen throughout, whether people have to go to the bathroom, you get food, meet someone new, go off on side adventures that you like to do.
Right, exactly. Actually, at music festivals, I think that's where I first really found my love of being solo. Like I like got lost, from my group, and in your first few festivals, you're like, this place is so massive, it's like a whole world in itself. I still feel that way, but I got lost, and I was like, all right, I'm alone. I was like, I'm just gonna enjoy it, and I just fell in love with it, man. It's so fun just to just like hear your thoughts and be off on an adventure that like only you yourself are experiencing, and getting to like meet like a whole bunch of random people, but also being able to just like dip at any point is it's fun.
It is. Yeah, I think that's something that I've had similar to. First festivals are on to massive groups, 20, 30 people. Now it just gets smaller down to like 1, 2, maybe 4 at the most.
Yeah. And then you just set a couple sets where you're like, okay, we'll get the whole group together for like, Dylan Francis, and everyone's gonna be stage left.
Yeah, that's the UNLV stage left. I think that's how we all became such good friends. Just literally run into you at every festival, front left.
yeah, front left, always front left. Bethany Perrin and Zach Fishman. Were you friends with them?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I would always run into them at festivals. Seabass, because Seabass was like, part of your guys' EDC crew. Yeah, it's like all the UNLV people, always front left.
It's so funny. It is. It's just a smaller world, and now you're exploring a much larger world of that.
Yeah, man.
So I am curious too. What's just the feeling like difference when you're traveling with a lover and traveling alone? Because you're sharing, instead of sharing, you are sharing it with a camera too, but you're sharing it with someone who has feelings towards you, and you're sleeping with somebody, so you feel their energy, and you guys vibe off each other all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with their decisions as well. Food or whatever the case may be.
I would say traveling with a lover is much more about the relationship. And like, you're kind of like in your own little world going through the world. And traveling alone, you feel like you're just part of the world, or at least for me, because I'm sure everybody handles relationships and all that stuff differently. I'm definitely not the
it's a subjective it's a subjective feeling.
Love or definitely subjective, but I definitely still think that pertains to even just traveling with like a really good friend, like I've done in the past. Traveling with someone that's going to be with you for the whole trip is very much about your relationship with each other, if it's a lover or a friend. And it is a very bonding experience, because if you're with somebody through like some testing times, like as travel tends to do, you are going to have periods where you're like super annoyed with them, or like maybe like mad, or like we'll have to talk things out, or will like want to do other things. With any like relationship or friend, or most of them anyway, I always made sure to like have at least half a day where I was off doing stuff on my own, just because that's how I've always been. But I think it's it helps you keep the relationship healthy. But traveling with a lover is it's a super super beautiful experience. I talked to other nomad friends who have dated people in vans, and they're like, yeah, like we might have dated for 2 years, but like we had, like, if you think about it, the time together and the experiences together of a couple that maybe had been dating for like 10 years or 15 years, just the amount of things that you experience and survive and go through together is pretty crazy. It's very bonding, and it will definitely cement, or show you that like that relationship is not where you're meant to be after a certain period of time. Things happen fast, and then they can like unravel, not in a bad way.
Yeah, it's accelerating the moment. When you're with someone, you're traveling to create moments with each other, where it's by yourself, you're traveling to experience life and whatever is thrown at you, and you're more reactive.
Right. Yeah, definitely definitely very much more reactive and observant of like your environment for sure.
That's exciting.
I recommend both. They're both wonderful.
I know. I hope one day that we can meet up somewhere.
As lovers?
Somewhere along. No, no.
Okay. Ah, dang it. Well, what am I doing here? I gotta go.
No, it's saying I hope one day in the future, I can meet up with you along your travels, wherever that may be, or maybe you find a home somewhere randomly temporary at the time. But before we do go, I do have a few questions for you. Some Troy.
Yeah. Whenever, by the way, you're welcome at any point, man. It would be an honor to have you along on the adventure. That'd be sweet.
Oh, I'd love it. So I have some
The lovers thing is still negotiable, by the
way. So the year's 2030. What does the Earth story look like? Or what are the goals?
What's that?
Or what are the goals?
What are the goals? Sure. Yeah, right now I'm pretty focused on, I see the power of social media and how rapidly it can spark movements. And so like, that's my whole goal over the next 10 years is to like, well, understand the Earth, tell like the really important stories, whether it's like environmental stuff, social humanitarian stuff, get into like a lot more serious topics while also keeping like the fun and whimsical vlog vibe of Earth story. I think those two mixed together is can do a lot of good, because I notice like, watching the news or, those kinds of mediums, people tend to feel pretty depressed when they like hear about everything that's going on. And the natural reaction when you're like, 1,000 people died in Syria and the Earth is fucked and blah, 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 blah. It's hard to like you get overwhelmed and you're like, how am I supposed to like do anything? Like, how am I supposed to make a difference if these problems are so big? So I really, I just want to create a lot of social movements and, keep building the following. Like I said, the numbers aren't important to me, but I recognize the value in having 1 million or like 10 million subscribers. So at the surface level, that's the goal. By 2030, I'd like to have 10 million plus subscribers, but ultimately cover a lot of stories that I think are important, get people fired up about like making really big changes in the world. And for myself, like my unique niche that I'm really trying to carve out for myself in the social sphere, the YouTube sphere, the Earth sphere, is to bridge the gaps between all these different tribes of humanity right now, like bridge the gap between vegans and hunters, or like Republicans and or liberals, blah, like the list goes on. And there's not that much communication, especially these days with like the abundance of information we have. Like even myself, tend to put ourselves in echo chambers. And so I really want to not be the only bridge between those people, but that's definitely what I'm focusing on. So right now, my goals are like encourage critical thinking, across all belief systems, and kind of in a lighter hearted way dissect ideology. And it doesn't matter like what kind of ideology, like that could be gun control ideology, gun freedom ideology, like vegans or meat eating, or like whatever. Just encourage a much more open and a world that can be considerate of other ideas, because the more ideas we can take in and hold in our hands and observe, I think that creates for a lot more good humans that can really impact a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. It's about unifying different cultures, and traditional use just fear mongers on specific issues, and your videos developed in a creative and empathetic, positive way of unifying different thoughts, beliefs, people across the entire sphere. So there's no doubt in my mind you can do it. And
we'll see.
In one of your videos, there was a quote that you said, and it kind of stuck with me, where you talked about how death is the grand adventure, and that's how you see it. So if death is the grand adventure, then what is life? when you said it, it was towards the end of, I don't remember what specific video. It kind of just stuck with me. It's an interesting spin on traveling to dozens and dozens of different cultures, and how you see that it's about growing older, becoming wiser, and you're just progressing towards death.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, as a child, I was a pretty fearful person, and I still can be often. But I made the decision to like never let the fear of dying get in the way of going to explore, every part of the world. But to me, like the earth is just like a tiny, tiny little fraction, even mathematically, it's a tiny fraction of the whole universe. And that's like my ultimate dream, is to explore the universe. And with death being the grand adventure, I mean, earth is like, life rather is, you can see it as like training, or you can see it as like the first adventure maybe, right? But on the other side of where we die, there's thousands of different philosophies of where you go, but the only certain thing that everyone can agree on is that it's the biggest unknown of all time. And to me, I'm like, I think when I wrote that and said that out, and I still hold this belief true, I'm pretty excited to die, to see like what's on the other end. I'm not trying to speed that process up by any means. In fact, I'd like to, if transhumanism becomes a reality in our age, I would love to live to 500 years old. And even then, I don't think I would have gotten enough of Earth and this existence, but I'm pretty psyched, when the time comes to see what's on the other end of it, because if stuff like the multiverse theory, or pick your not your poison, but pick your potion. And it's just exciting all around for me.
I love that you have that similar philosophy, because I always tell all my friends that I plan on living forever, and eventually, hopefully, Elon Musk can figure out Neuralink so we can upload ourselves to a computer database eventually in the future.
I don't think I would upload myself to a database. Maybe if I could like separate my consciousness, because I would like to die, but it's definitely a plan of mine to live as long as possible, to see extra solar travel. I mean, my goal for the next 30 years, 40 years is to like gather enough skills and a track record where I'd be like a valuable asset to go to Mars, because I'd love to take Earth story to Mars.
Mars story.
Mars story, yeah. I think it can happen.
I love that. So we're talking about hippies, and you surrounded yourself with hippies, and they've gotten you all the views. Obviously, the internet is obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. What makes hippies so misunderstood?
Yeah.
What, through your experiences of meeting them, what exactly makes them hippies, and why? And they have to be misunderstood because people are always so interested in finding out why they're different. Have you noticed any similarities within the differences of them towards society?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously not like you can work a 9-to-5 job and still be a hippie or whatever. I mean, even that term is like so loaded, like what the hell does it actually mean? But to me, like the hippie nomad-ish people that I've met are just unafraid to break from the mold, like not afraid to get dirty and go travel by any means necessary, or start a homestead in the middle of nowhere and grow their own food. I guess these days I don't go by that label as much, but hippie to me has always just meant somebody that's not not afraid to chase after their dreams and chase after an unknown, because the standard choice is like this default world, as the burners say, which we've kind of gotten enough of. It's like ravished the planet and has sucked a lot of joy from life. And so I don't know, I don't think people will even label themselves as hippies in like 10 or 20 or 30 years. It's just going to be like there's a lot of different kinds of like very weird and beautiful humans out there that just chase what they love and do it by any means necessary.
Yeah, hippie is such a colored word, because it's somebody who breaks the standard mold and goes against the grain, but then eventually people try to follow that same idea. Like, for example, when YouTube first started, there's people creating YouTube channels, which was breaking the mold from traditional media. Now everyone's creating YouTube channels and it's creating individuality, but then again, you're following into the saturated market. So it's like, what exactly is a hippie?
Yeah. That's where words, words can only go so far. But like in the 60s, a hippie was someone who loved alternative music and did acid or mushrooms.
And that's
who is
everybody.
that today? That's literally everybody today, literally everybody, including Mike Tyson. 30 years ago, Mike Tyson would not be called a hippie, but he's doing DMT off toads.
Everyone wants to be different yet the same.
Yeah.
The irony. And the last question before we go is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
Las Vegas is home, man. Las Vegas is it's just where I built the whole story, the whole platform that catapulted me into what I'm doing now. And by most accounts, Las Vegas is outside of the Strip is a pretty boring city. But what makes Vegas so special is like 100% just the people. Because growing up there was nothing, no culture, no art, but it was like the people my age that stayed in Vegas and built, friend groups, and everybody kind of knows everybody because we had to go out and search for the culture. So Vegas is a very default city, going back to that idea that was brought to life by a lot of different people, and I'm super lucky to know hundreds of them.
I love that. I hope maybe a year from now, or whenever you get back from your next grand adventure, that you could come on the show and share with everyone what exactly happened, and maybe some of the undocumented things that have happened within your videos.
I'd love to, man. Yeah, thank you for having me on, dude. It was a pleasure.
Oh, I love this. We did have some audio technical difficulties. It was the first time that's ever happened, but I'll edit it, figure it out, or even just upload it and say fuck it.
Yeah. Hey, nothing good is ever easy, right?
It's so true. Also, before we go, where can everyone follow you personally and Our Earth Story?
Yeah, so just go to youtube.com/earthstory, one word. If you just type in Earth Story into the YouTube search bar, it'll be the first channel that pops up, and then all of my links will be from that channel.
That is awesome. Thank you, Troy. And if you guys liked this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, give it all that fun jazz, so I could be like Troy and I could be one of the top views when you type in the guest list.
Yeah.
All in time, my friends. I'm glad you made it all the way to the end. Please follow us on @theguestlistpod and @JakeGallen if you want to know more about me. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode once again, and we'll catch you on the next Flip Side Around.